The sun had barely set when it happened. The moment that would split my life into a before and an after. We were just two girls, laughing in her room like we always did. Her mom was working late, and her little sister was at a friend's place. The house felt quiet, like the world outside had paused for us. For me, it felt like safety. For her, maybe something else entirely. "Hey," she said out of nowhere, brushing her messy hair behind one ear. "Don't freak out, but would you ever want to try something with me?" I laughed. I actually laughed. Not because I was mocking her, just because I genuinely thought she was joking. "What?" "Like, try what?" She looked at me with this strange intensity. Like she had been thinking about it for a while. Something more than friendship. Just to see. I mean, we're both curious, right? And I trust you. I blinked, unsure if I heard her right. I thought my friend was just joking when she offered me to do this with her. But then she didn't laugh. She just stared at me, silent, vulnerable, and kind of scared. And suddenly I didn't feel like laughing anymore. My heart stuttered. I could hear it in my ears, loud and uneven. The air between us changed. It wasn't heavy, not yet. But it was different. Electric, somehow. I didn't know what to say. So I didn't say anything at all. I just looked at her. And she looked at me. And in that space of silence, something else began to bloom. Not a yes. Not a no. Just, maybe. The next day felt like it was wearing the wrong skin. Everything looked the same, school hallways, morning routines, the clatter of trays in the cafeteria, but nothing felt the same inside me. I couldn't stop thinking about her. About what she said. About how serious her eyes were when she said it. I kept waiting for it to feel like a dream, something that would fade in daylight, but it didn't. If anything, it pressed heavier on my chest the longer I carried it around. I thought maybe she'd avoid me, maybe act like it never happened. I wouldn't have blamed her if she did. But when I saw her in the hallway before second period, she didn't look away. She smiled. Warm. Easy. Like she hadn't just rearranged my entire world with a single question. "Hey," she said, brushing her shoulder against mine lightly. "Still thinking about it?" My breath caught in my throat. I tried to act casual, like her words didn't turn my stomach inside out. I didn't say anything, just kind of shrugged, feeling the heat rise to my face. She didn't tease. She didn't push. She just leaned a little closer and said, "We don't have to make it a big deal. We're still us. But, if you're still curious, I meant what I said." Then she walked off, her hair swinging behind her like nothing happened, like she hadn't just carved that sentence into my ribs. And all day, that offer sat with me. Quiet. Sticky. Strange. It filled up every space in my mind, turned up in every glance across the classroom, every buzz of my phone I hoped was from her. At lunch, we sat where we always did, next to each other, close enough to bump shoulders. But today, everything about that closeness buzzed with meaning. Her knee brushed mine. She didn't move it away. Neither did I. We kept talking about dumb things, teachers, cafeteria food, weekend plans, but my heart was never in it. My body felt like it was 2 seconds away from betraying me. I could feel the weight of her presence like heat. And maybe that's when I knew this wasn't just a weird phase or a passing moment. I was scared, yes, but not because of her. Because of how much I already wanted to say yes. Because of how much I already wanted something I didn't understand yet. That weekend, I went to her house again. Just like always. We'd done it 100 times, sleepovers, movie nights, snacks in bed, laughing until we couldn't breathe. But this time, everything felt like it was holding its breath. I brought popcorn like usual. She picked the movie, something light and stupid we wouldn't have to pay attention to. But I couldn't focus on the screen. All I could think about was the space between us on the couch. The way her leg was almost touching mine. The way her hand rested on the cushion, close enough that if I moved just a little, my fingers would graze hers. She wasn't talking as much as she usually did. Neither was I. We were both pretending to be normal, but the silence was louder than anything playing on the TV. When the movie ended, the credits rolling with some soft piano music, she turned to me. "You okay?" she asked. Her voice was soft, careful. I nodded too quickly, almost like I was trying to convince myself. She gave me a tiny smile, barely there. "You're allowed to be nervous." "I am too." That made something twist in my chest. Warmth. Fear. Something that felt like the edge of tears but wasn't quite. "I don't want this to mess us up," I said. My voice came out smaller than I expected. "It won't," she said, her eyes not leaving mine. "Only if we lie to ourselves." She reached for my hand slowly, giving me time to pull away. I didn't. Her fingers slid into mine like they were meant to be there. We sat like that for a long time. Saying nothing. Just holding hands, our pulses thumping quietly against each other's skin. I kept waiting for it to feel wrong, or weird, or like a mistake. But all I felt was quiet. Steady. Safe. Her thumb brushed over mine once, and I looked up. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't nervous. She was just there. Real. Present. And maybe, for the first time, so was I. For days afterward, we didn't talk about what happened. Not because we were avoiding it, but because there was something sacred about the silence that followed. Like neither of us wanted to break whatever had begun to grow between us. But still, it was there, in the way we looked at each other in class, in the longer pauses between texts, in the way my heart jumped every time I saw her name on my phone. Everything felt softer and louder at the same time. I couldn't tell if the world had changed or if I had. Maybe both. One night, while I was curled under my blanket pretending to study, my phone lit up with her name. "Still thinking about you. Is that weird?" I stared at the screen for so long I forgot to breathe. My fingers hovered above the keyboard, shaking a little. Then I typed, "No. It's not." And just like that, something clicked into place. Something I didn't know I was waiting for. The next day, instead of sitting with our usual group at lunch, she nudged me gently and said, "Come with me." I followed her, heart pounding. We ended up in an empty classroom, sunlight spilling through the windows like golden water. She sat on a desk and looked at me, quiet and open. "So what now?" she asked. Her voice was calm, but I could hear the hope tucked underneath. I sat across from her, my knees bouncing, my thoughts spinning in every direction. "I don't know," I said honestly. "But I don't want this to be just a thing we tried. I don't want it to be something we pretend didn't matter." She nodded slowly, her eyes holding mine like they were afraid I might disappear. "Good. Because I don't want to stop thinking about you." And just like that, I smiled. It wasn't forced. It wasn't nervous. It was real. Something about hearing it out loud made it easier to breathe. She reached across and touched my hand again, and this time, it didn't feel like a question. It felt like a promise. We grew closer in secret. Not because we were ashamed, but because we didn't know what to call it yet. It wasn't a relationship, not exactly. Not something we could explain to anyone else. It was ours, quiet, delicate, and unfolding slowly in the shadows of our routine. No one at school seemed to notice, or if they did, they didn't say anything. But to me, it felt like everyone was watching. Every time our eyes met across the hallway, every time our hands brushed under the table, my chest tightened like I was walking a tightrope. I wasn't scared of her. I was scared of how much I was starting to need her. I was scared of being seen. She never asked for more than I could give. She didn't pressure me to define anything. She just showed up, always calm, always steady, with these soft smiles that made me feel like I wasn't alone. I kept waiting for the fear to pass, but instead, it settled in beside the feeling that was growing for her. One night, we were sitting under the stars on her back porch, knees touching, fingers tangled together. I looked at her and whispered, "What if this is wrong?" She didn't flinch. She didn't even blink. She just looked at me with this gentle sadness and said, "Or maybe it's just real." And for the first time, I didn't feel the need to run away from what I felt. I just sat there, next to her, listening to the crickets, letting the warmth of her hand ground me. In the silence, I realized I had never felt more understood than I did in that moment. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quiet. Safe. Unmistakably honest. And that scared me more than anything ever had. Because it meant it mattered. Because it meant she mattered. And once you admit that, there's no turning back. Then came the first fallout. It started with something small, so small I barely remember what it was now. A message left on read too long. A comment that hit wrong. A shift in tone during one of our late-night conversations. But whatever it was, it spiraled fast. She sent something that sounded distant. I responded with something colder. And suddenly, all the quiet understanding we had built felt like it was cracking beneath us. I told her she was pulling away. She said I was always looking for an exit. I told her I didn't feel like I mattered to her sometimes. She said I didn't let her show me. Her voice wasn't angry. Just tired. And that somehow made it worse. It hurt more than I expected it to. Maybe because I had let myself believe we were unbreakable. Or maybe because we mattered more than either of us had dared to say out loud. After that night, we didn't speak. No goodnight texts. No passing smiles in the hallway. Just silence. Heavy and miserable. The kind of silence that leaves echoes behind. Every time I passed her at school, it felt like walking past a version of myself I didn't recognize anymore. I kept looking at my phone, hoping to see her name, but nothing came. On the third day, I almost convinced myself it was over. That maybe whatever this was, whatever we were, was too fragile to survive real tension. But then, just as I was settling into the ache, she showed up at my door. She didn't say much. Her eyes were puffy like she hadn't slept. Her hands were shaking a little. All she said was, "I'm sorry." And I didn't need to ask for what. Because I was sorry too. For shutting down. For making her feel like she had to fix it alone. I stepped outside and wrapped my arms around her. We stood there on the porch, holding each other, saying nothing. Just breathing. And for the first time in days, the world felt quiet in a good way again. After that, things changed again, not back to how they were before, but into something deeper, something quieter and more honest. We didn't talk about the fight much. We didn't need to. What mattered was how we both came back, how we chose each other even when it got hard. There was something stronger in the way we moved around each other now. She looked at me differently, like she was seeing all the parts one had tried to hide, and still stayed. I didn't flinch as much when she reached for my hand. I didn't overthink it when I found myself leaning into her shoulder, breathing in her warmth like it was something I had missed for years. We stopped calling it curiosity. We stopped pretending it was just a phase or something to laugh off later. It wasn't. It was late-night texts that turned into early morning calls. It was walking slower after school so we could stretch the time we had together. It was sitting close on the bus, sharing earbuds, her head resting against mine. We started talking about the future, in the kind of way people do when they're scared to admit they want the same thing. She asked what I wanted, really wanted, and for once I didn't lie. I told her I wanted to feel safe, seen, loved, and she didn't hesitate when she said, "You already are." And one night, after we had spent hours talking about everything and nothing, she looked at me with this quiet certainty and whispered, "I think I love you." It didn't feel like a line. It didn't feel like something meant to get a reaction. It just felt true. Like she'd been holding it for a while and finally let it fall gently between us. I didn't freeze this time. I didn't panic. I just looked into her eyes and said, "I think I do too." And for the first time, saying it didn't feel scary. It felt like home. I wish I could say it stayed that way, wrapped in soft words and stolen moments, untouched by the outside world. But secrets don't stay quiet forever. Someone saw us, maybe in the hallway, maybe at lunch when we thought no one was paying attention, maybe in one of those small glances that held too much meaning. Whispers started. Not loud, but enough. Enough to change the way people looked at us. Enough to make the air feel different when we walked into a room. I tried to act like it didn't bother me, like their words bounced off me, but they didn't. They sank in, deeper every day, pulling at every thread of fear I thought I had buried. She stayed calm, like she always did. She told me not to worry, that we'd be okay. She reminded me who I was, who we were, how none of it mattered if we just kept choosing each other. But it got to me. The way some people stopped talking when I walked past. The way friends I thought I knew suddenly changed their tone. And one day, when the whispers got too loud, when the stares felt too sharp, I broke. Someone asked if we were more than just friends, and I laughed. I laughed and shook my head and said, "No, it's not like that." And in that moment, I saw her face. I saw the way her smile faltered, just a little. The way her eyes darkened with something quiet and heavy. She didn't say anything. She just turned away. And this time, she didn't text. Didn't wait for me after class. Didn't show up at my door. The silence wasn't comforting anymore. It was hollow. And I hated myself for it. I hated the way I let fear win. I couldn't sleep for nights. Everything felt wrong, food tasted dull, music sounded off, even the sky looked emptier. I missed her laugh. I missed the softness in her voice when she said my name. I missed feeling like I was enough. So I went to her. My legs shook the whole way. My voice was barely steady when I knocked. She opened the door and looked at me, not angry, not cold, just tired. Tired in the way that makes your heart ache. She didn't ask what I was doing there. She just said, "Why?" And I answered with the only truth I had left. Because I was scared. But I'm more scared of losing you. We stood there, eyes locked in silence, the kind that stretches across all the things that were said and all the things we wish we had said sooner. Then she whispered, "Then don't lose me." And I didn't. I stepped forward. I took her hands. I looked her in the eyes and said, "I won't lie again. Not to you. Not to myself. Because what we had was real. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't simple, but it was honest. And love like that doesn't come around often. It doesn't come screaming. It comes quietly, patiently, waiting for you to choose it. So I did. I chose her. I chose us.